Welcome back. It's Friday, end of the week, just going through a huge stack of stories. And let me tell you, the government, boys and girls who fashion themselves to be psychologists and mass social analysts, are watching this very closely and running everything through their AI-driven supercomputers. Quantum supercomputers, excuse me, that's the new word you're supposed to use. Interesting stories out of China. Hubei, that's the province Wuhan is located in. They have lifted the quarantine, apparently, in parts of Hubei. I'm not sure if they've done it province-wide, but when they did, the police were set upon by mobs of very unhappy residents. They were beaten with their own shields, police cars flipped over. This is what happens when you sit on people for too long. They start to go a little loony. Or maybe it's not loony. Hospital in China refuses to admit a coronavirus patient to keep the new case numbers at 0. See how they're doing it? And if you missed earlier the story, well, this underscores what I've been guessing. It's a guess. But after all I've seen and all I've watched, my guess is that between 5 and 15 million Chinese died and were burned. There were 49 crematories in Wuhan at 49 funeral homes. One of them had 18 or 19 furnaces, 11 of which were working. And the one guy who worked there gave that interview. I think some of you remember. It was in Chinese. We had subtitles for it. He was screaming. They actually were trying to make him work a triple shift. That's 24 hours a day. He said, we're burning bodies nonstop, 120 a day. Multiply that by 49, and you get the math idea. Then the Chinese government said that they're bringing in thousands and thousands of what they call portable crematories. You know what they were? You'll never guess. A 10-yard, what they call a 10-yard steel dump truck. They were bringing dump trucks in, filling them with bodies, and burning them in the dump trucks, and then going out and dumping the remains in pits. 5 to 15 million dead. Add to that the interesting footnote that the Chinese, who depend on their smartphones more than even we do to pay bills, to do everything, suddenly last month 21 million smartphone accounts vanished right off the books, which further gives credence to my guess that a hell of a lot of people have died there. Now, we today in the formerly United States have surpassed the world. We are number one. 100,000 cases, is it? I think something like that. Let me double check to be sure. I didn't put that story up there. It is 100,000 cases. We are now the world's epicenter of the coronavirus. And yet there are still people out there who are saying this is a hoax, it's just like the flu. And all I can say to those of you who, and you have the right to believe it, it's up to you. Those of you who believe that, good luck. Young man in Texas, father of 6, perfect health, no underlying health conditions, died 2 days after being diagnosed. These stories are coming across my desk all too often, and now I'm beginning to get stories about suicides. Coronavirus-related suicides. One 19-year-old girl who is quite pretty for what young people consider pretty these days, killed herself. She was afraid of being locked down. Another case, and there are many more, I only put 2 up, this will be posted shortly. An older gentleman in his 60s, 68 I think, jumped out of a Manhattan high-rise. You're going to see this more and more now as the shutdowns and lockdowns and quarantines become more enforced. And speaking of enforcement, in Vancouver, British Columbia, the cops can ticket you and you're liable for a fine of up to $50,000 if you simply get too close to someone else. This is physical distancing, or, social distancing. Vancouver, BC can now enforce social distancing with fines of up to $50,000. You walk too close to somebody, or maybe somebody will say, hey, he walked too close to me. You're ticketed, then you've got to pay the price, whatever it may be. This is crazy. Earlier today, my last two notes, Trump incredibly questioned Governor Mario Cuomo's demand that they have need for 30,000 ventilators, which they will have. Maybe not today, but in a very few days. He mocked it. Well, later on in the day, finally, the Orange Man, under obvious enormous pressure, invoked the Defense Production Act and ordered General Motors to begin to produce ventilators after the talks stalled between the Trump administration and GM. So finally he got off his fat ass and did something, which he should have done over 2 months ago. The whole thing is surreal. Speaking of surreal, let's talk to John Barbour. Hello, Johnny. How are you down there in Las Vegas?
Well, Jeff, I am in absolute total shock. While your doomsday music was playing, I thought, oh, my God, I'll be so glad when that music is over with so that I can hear Jeff's very pleasant voice, and then you come on with this god-awful, disastrous news. So let me just ask you a couple of simple questions.
Let me get my simple answers. Hold on. All right, I got it. Go ahead.
Okay, couple of simple questions. First of all, are your sources reliable? 15 million deaths in China. So I'm going to ask you.
I didn't say 50. I said between 5 and 15.
Yeah, I said 15. I did not say
sorry.
50.
You broke up a little bit there. I didn't hear it.
Okay. Well, because I'm thinking about this whole thing. If this were a movie, it would either be The Day the Earth Stood Still or The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. And you've given us really the ugly. You're saying that we are now the center of this plague, and the deaths are real. And I can give you a couple of examples of that from my own family, okay? The deaths are very real.
You've lost people in your family, John?
I'll get to that in a minute.
Oh.
I'll get to that in a minute. If the people in Hubei or wherever it is rioting,
Hubei,
it is my impression, because when I was a kid, I was vaccinated a half a dozen times and locked up in quarantine for scarlet fever and the mumps and diphtheria and all that kind of stuff. And I've survived over 8 decades having had these vaccinations. And why people are terrified of vaccinations is absolutely beyond me. In some cases, there have been accidents where children have died after being vaccinated. I do not know. So, but in any event, if we with these riots, it seems to me when I was quarantined as a kid, and everybody was quarantined in Toronto in my area, you could not go out of the house then. Right. When we were finally allowed to go out of the house, we didn't beat up anybody.
We were different people then.
No, we felt it was a definite health scare. Now, it would seem to me the only reason some of these people might riot, now I'm just an amateur psychologist observing real people all my life, is not because they were quarantined because of health, but a lot of them might have been quarantined because they were just protesters on the street and locked up for no reason. Now you're telling...
Who knows? Who knows?
You're telling your audience...
Right.
You're telling your audience there are 15 million deaths in China.
No, I didn't say that. I said my guess is, my projection is, on the basis of everything down, is between 5 and 15. That's all.
You still said it, and it scares the shit out of people. Now, if that's the case, and if we're now worse than China, how come fewer than 1,300 people have died in the United States?
Tune in a couple of weeks. That's all I can tell you. I can't predict the future. I don't know.
Oh, but it may be all over at Easter. Donald Trump told us it'll be all over at Easter. He forgot Easter. He forgot that the Easter bunny is quarantined. I can tell you, my son was, I wanted to come on the show to literally try and lighten up things. And you're making it very difficult with bad news. Did you, by the way, get the email that I sent you earlier?
Yes, we're going to read to the wonderful people a little later.
Oh, if we have time. I frankly think we're going to run out of time. I just wanted to tell the audience that
I'm going to send you the story. I'm going to send you the story from it's Zero Hedge, and they've got the videos of the Chinese. Okay, good.
Because your fans are a lot of my fans, and they overwhelm me with this stuff, and I try to absorb it. I'm going to be. I don't feel like I'm in lockdown because I've been in lockdown most of my life.
Yeah, we all have.
I've been as an orphan. I've been a solitary, struggling citizen for decades and decades until I was lucky enough to meet my wife and have my son. So now I have them, and I have a couple of friends, and that's it. Now, you know how much food I have stored up? For how long?
3 days. 3 days.
30 minutes.
30 minutes. Well, that was close. Come on. That was close.
Let me tell you something. If you allow the government to dictate to you how to live your life and you go out and you store stuff, you are admitting that they're winning. Okay, so my life right now is absolutely no different than it was before, except I'm having a tough time finding a golf course that it's over. So now we're locked down.
Is there still one just open? Only one open there in Vegas, right? Only one? Wasn't that the last thing?
Yeah, there's one open here and one open in Toronto, 50 miles east of here, which is the whorehouse capital of the world. So, but I'll get to that in a minute because I'm thinking, if we're in quarantine like this for another 90 days, Jeff, every guy in the country is going to have a goddamn haircut like you. I mean, we're all going to look like you because we can't get to a barber. I got to tell you something. I am fortunate because, first of all, somehow or another, not only was I gifted with a really sick sense of humor, but my friends are a lot funnier and a lot more upbeat than I am. And I wanted to come on the show and share some of this with you because we are like cockroaches and we are going to survive this. And I'll tell you, one of the things that is going to happen, people locked up alone are going to realize that the worst people that they can be around in such a time like this is themselves. They don't
know themselves. Oh, you're right. You're totally right.
So they're going to, okay, now the other thing that I posted about a week ago, I said with husbands and wives in this country all having to work 2 jobs to support 2 kids or 3 kids and an automobile and the rest of it are going to be forced to go home. I predicted that the disease would not spread as fast as divorces and in some cases fortunate births, because we all remember the blackout in New York, and 9 months later the population of New York absolutely exploded. What I was afraid to mention, and before I get to that, I'm going to say this. One of the most valuable things that anybody can learn being locked up like this is they're going to realize they have a lot of things in their lives that they do and people that they see who are absolutely, totally meaningless to them. Meaningless to them. So, and this will be over. So my suggestion to them is, and I don't give advice, it's just a suggestion, when this is over, do not fill your time, as you've been doing most of your life, with things that distract you, with people that just distract you, or things that just distract you. Only focus on the things and the people that give you absolute and total joy. Because if you do that, you will discover absolute and true happiness that was in you all the time, but you never got to look at it, and now you're forced to look at it. Now, one of the things that I did not mention, as you mentioned, and I guess I'm glad you mentioned because it's the truth, the number of suicides. I was afraid to predict there will be massive amounts of suicides in this country, and I know it's coming. 2 days ago, I got a private note from a lovely, lovely lady. And I got to tell you about some of my fans who will cheer you up as they cheered me up. She sent me a note, and she said, do you think there'll be an increase in divorces and maybe, fortunately, births, as you mentioned? And I answered back, and I said, you obviously read my post, and the answer is yes. And she said, why didn't you mention suicide? So it seems obvious. And I said, oh, my God. I was afraid to mention it because it is so obvious, and it's certainly going to happen. She said, John, I don't know why I contacted you, but last night my son-in-law, who's 35 years of age, pulled out his revolver and blew his brains out. And she said, we've got to do something about the mental depression that is going to strike this country. And I said to you, I can't tell you how dreadfully sorry I am for what you and your daughter-in-law are going through this, and your grandchildren and the rest of them are going through. It's just horrifying. And the truth is, Jeff, I have known more people in my life who've committed suicide than died of natural causes. And I outline a lot of them in my book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Beginning with my grandfather. My grandfather was laid off by Brown's Bakery when he was in his 60s because they didn't want anybody over 60 anymore. And he couldn't stand it because he and his wife, my grandmother, never spoke for 30 years. They in the same house. They never spoke for 30 years. So he went to my mother, who was in charge of Woolworth's department store, and wanted a job just as a janitor. And she turned him down. And that night he went home and he hung himself in the room that his wife wouldn't let him ever visit. And he never left a note. He still didn't speak in death. So I understood what this lady was absolutely going through. But you know what, Jeff? We are beyond the stage of mental depression in this country. The thing that kills people is hopelessness. And the worst thing that can happen to anyone is that they have the feeling they're not in charge of their own lives and their own futures. And that is what is happening with people who are beginning to store. Don't store. Just don't. Just keep living as best you can. I get up every morning and I go to the market to observe the human comedy at work, and I get enough just to cook that day. We've lived in this house for a dozen years, and I just love cooking. That's what I do. And Sarita, about 20 years ago, once cooked the greatest beef bourguignon I ever ate in my life. I've only eaten it once. It was the best dish ever. So she said to me 4 days ago, she said, honey, if we're going to be locked down like this, she said, maybe I should take out the cookbook and cook again. So I said, hey, that'd be great. So you know what I did? I took the cookbook to the car wash to have the dust washed off.
That's pretty cute. Yeah.
In 20 years. Now, let me tell you first I'll tell you about a couple of other deaths. My son, and if I have a chance, I'm going to read to you a note my son sent me privately on Facebook about what is happening to America and us in this world. I have known three geniuses in my life. One, of course, was Buckminster Fuller. Right. The other, of course, was Jim Garrison. And the third is my son. More than anybody on the internet, more than anybody in government, more than anybody on the planet, my son makes as much sense as only Mark Twain ever made. And if I have a chance, I'm going to read that to you because it'll lift your spirits up. It won't depress you in any way. I'm going to tell you, sometimes I wish that you and I could do this show on camera, because there are 3 or 4 things that people have sent me that I think you would absolutely and totally love. But my son was in Spain for 6 months doing his series with his partner, a science fiction series, for 6 months to be shot in Spain, and they were headquartered in Madrid. They had a Russian actress.
Did they wrap? Hold on? Did they wrap before the virus hit Spain? Did they get done?
Is there music playing for a break?
Yeah, but let me ask you this: did they get their shooting done?
Yeah, no. He caught the last plane. I'll tell you about it after your break.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Let's thank our sponsors who make this possible. We'll be right back with Uncle John in just a minute. All right, welcome back. John is here from Las Vegas, which must be awfully strange right now, Johnny. The streets.
It's a twilight zone. And thinking of films, I'm thinking of Woody Allen probably saying to himself, "Geez, what a great time to be a bank robber." I mean, you walk into a bank with a mask and nobody's going to question you. You walk up to the teller and say,
"That's funny.
Give me all
that's a good point.
Give me all your money or I'll sneeze on you." Okay, I'm going to read this briefly.
That's a felony nowadays, yeah.
Yeah, so in the last week, Jeff, literally millions of people, pro-Trump and anti-Trump, are on record on Facebook as saying this virus, in quotes, which has not killed 1,300 people, is being used as an excuse by the government to gain more control and to deny us what dwindling freedoms we have left. You've all seen it. So my simple question is this: isn't Donald Trump the head of the government? Or was Jimmy Harrison right when he said, after they murdered President Kennedy, no president will run this government? So I am just asking, and I have a couple of comments to make about Donald Trump, because this is not a stimulus package. It is a survival package. And what it proves, some people are saying, now you're getting a taste of socialism because you're going to get these checks. Well, what it proves, Jeff, is that these capitalists who own us and have put us into all these fake waters and murdered all of our leaders, these capitalists are not above doing what FDR did when he created Social Security, is instituting socialist programs to save their capitalist asses. Now, I'll tell you very simply what the difference is about this. The 1% are not in the least affected by this. It's all us bottom feeders, 99%. This is going to run out. You can only print so many trillions. I sent 2 notes to Donald Trump. I never get a response, but I still send them anyway. I said, "Dear Mr. President, after you had the Federal Reserve running off trillions of dollars to temporarily halt this financial free fall, could you please have them run off some toilet paper?" Now,
yeah.
Okay, now if Donald Trump, supposedly, as Q says, is going to end the Federal Reserve, which is owned by 6 families.
Oh, please, don't waste your breath on that bullshit.
No, hold it. We know. I don't know that it's bullshit. They believe it's not bullshit. Do. Okay, I'm just making an observation. I do not call people names.
Donald Trump is going to end the Fed.
That's
Jesus
what Q
Christ.
believes. Okay,
yeah,
but listen to this. I told a couple of my Q-aholic and Trumpaholic friends that they have trillions that they can print and they'll blow away Trump and this tsunami that we're going through. But let's say he's having the Fed do this now, and the Fed is doing it. They're printing off trillions and trillions of dollars.
Monopoly money means nothing to them. Right.
Not backed by gold. So my note to the president was, if you are truly going to end the Fed, you could now do what President John Kennedy did in 1963 for 7 months. It is an executive order still extant. It is 11110. It was signed by President Kennedy because he felt that the Trump, being a private bank, didn't deserve to be paying. We pay our taxes, which is really interest to these 6 families. He said the Constitution mandates that our Treasury print our own money. So he printed silver certificates. It is all in the film. And I have some of these silver certificates redeemable by silver. You can't redeem money by gold anymore. I mean, Nixon and Reagan saw to that. So I said, all you have to do is re-implement Executive Order 1110 and start to print the money. And I'm having a lot of folks getting really angry at me for suggesting something that might also get their hero killed, as was John Kennedy, because when the death certificate was signed at 1:05 by Dr. McClellan, gunshot wound to the right temple, the printing presses actually stopped at that very moment. And they've never, and the same with, his screaming about fake news. When I go on 2 or 3 of what they call these red pill shows. They're strong Trump supporters. And they love the movie because they think the forces that killed JFK are on after Trump. And well, they may be. I don't know. But they believe that. And some of them are old enough to remember real people, so they like me a lot. I only say 2 things. I am neutral about Donald Trump as I am all authority, because since they murdered John Kennedy, I have only seen lies by every member of the government and media for the last 55 years since they murdered John Kennedy. There has not been one truthful comment about any disaster in this country, from the Vietnam War to Iraq to 9/11. That's why I'm suspicious about any kind of news I get now. So I just have to impart things to you. But anyway, I wanted to try to cheer you up a little bit, as some people have cheered me up. You asked me about Las Vegas, which is like the Twilight Zone. I just wish that we were on video sometimes, so I could show you this. A lady sent me the most brilliant and hilarious picture. 5 of her good friends, who are really strong poker players, played poker every day. She took a picture of them at a poker table, and they're playing for toilet paper.
That's cute. No, that's cute. Not so far-fetched. Not so far-fetched.
Then I have a very, very dear friend who is bilingual. She's born in the Ukraine. She's Russian, and she's really smart, because not only does she read the news in English, but she reads the news in Russian. So she informs me about a lot more things about America from Putin than I get from Trump or from anybody else. So she's a treasure, and we met by accident. She used to listen to me telling my show business stories on your show 4 years ago, and that's how we met. And her great sense of humor. She has 2 wonderful children. She's self-schooling them now. And then she put up a lovely note on Facebook, which she seldom does. She tries to stay off it because she thinks there are a lot of loonies up there and she doesn't want to get into trouble. But she posted something adorable. She says, I'm trying to figure out now how to spend my spring break, whether in the living room or the bedroom.
All right.
And then I want to get to my son in a minute, but this is
does Christopher listen to these programs often, or later in encore?
Only when his father is on. Bless his heart.
Well, that's what I meant. Christopher, if you're out there, hello, and stay safe and all the rest of it. And I'm just always happy to hear about your son. He's extraordinary. I understand that.
And of course, Sarita is by far your biggest fan. But in any event, this friend of mine is
she's the classiest lady that probably I've ever had the honor of having listened to this program. She is amazing. Nobody classier.
Is most amazing, peaceful human being I've ever met. And besides that, She has the most beautiful speaking voice of any female I have ever heard, and that includes people like Patricia Neal or Barbara Stanwyck or Betty Davis.
That's a unique compliment. You don't hear that very
often. The thing is, I won't tell you her age now, but at this age, she sounds the same. She sounds exactly the same as she was 20. You could not tell. If you look at her, she looks like she's in her early 40s, still brunette hair and teeth, and having a lot of Indian blood in her. She is hairless, which is remarkable for women because half of them spend half their time shaving their legs, their arms, their mustaches. She's never had any of that. But the voice...
Did you hear how John described Sarita? He said she has brunette hair and teeth, and she actually has teeth, does she? That's good. That's good.
There you go.
But that is a sign of youth.
My friend Jeff...
I heard that.
Okay. Right. My friend Jeff, who is an avid golfer, and he is married, and he said, he said, my wife and I lived together for 15 years, and all we've been experiencing is social distancing. So he said, when this thing crashed, now we're forced to do this. He said, I went to the psychiatrist with her, a marriage counselor. And he said, we sat down. And, of course, my wife just unleashed on me, worse than she did at home, all of my sexual faults and all of my clumsiness and the lack of being amorous and all the rest of it. And she said that, that I had never kissed her passionately, ever, even though we had a couple of kids that I think are mine. So he said the psychiatrist got up, walked around the table, bent over, tilted back my wife's head, and gave her the most passionate French deep kiss he'd ever seen. And my wife seemed to enjoy it. And then the psychiatrist went and sat back down and looked at me and said, okay, Jeff, can you do that 3 times a week? And Jeff said, well, Doc, I can bring her here Monday and Wednesday, but Friday I'm going fishing.
Good.
Okay, I have a fan named Gail. She's a single mother, widowed. Her husband died of cancer. And she said he finally became a nice man just before he died. And she's got 2 or 3. Yeah, that happens, And she has 2 or 3 kids. She was the very second person to order the book when she couldn't afford it. And she ordered the book because she used to hear me on your show and then read my stuff. And she thought, you mean that stuff's in a book now? And she wanted to pay off the $20, $2 a month. I mean, because she's having a hard time. She lost half of her house in a flood. Of course, I gifted her the book. She sent me the most adorable picture of her 2 grandsons who are 12 and 14, who are absolutely and totally in love, not only with their mother, who is a radical like me, but in love with the United States. And they barely even know it. They just know we're in shutdown and all wearing masks. So what the children did to assure their grandmother that they were okay, these 2 boys, they took their jock straps and fashioned them into face masks.
All right.
And the pictures are hilarious. And then I have a lady neighbor who sent me a note 4 days ago because I haven't stored up on anything, and she knows that she reads my stuff. And so she sent me a note, and she said, John, I'm ashamed to say this, but half of my garage is nothing but toilet paper. And she said, if you ever run out, you're only a block away. I'd be glad to bring you and Sarita bunches of it. And I thanked her very much. And I said, no, we will do without. And if if we run out of it completely, I will do what I do on a golf course, which is use dry leaves. So
dry leaves.
Charlie.
Right.
So there you go. But in any event, get back to my son for just a second. My son caught the last plane out of Madrid. He put himself in self-quarantine when he got to Los Angeles.
Right.
The day after they left, he found out that one of the Spanish young ladies who was a teacher, I guess in her late 20s, got the virus and died. He said both of the actresses caught it, but are okay. But he now has a dear friend who caught it this week and is in a life-threatening coma, and one of his other friends died a week ago.
Where is this? In Spain also, or is this over here?
This is Los Angeles.
Okay.
Now, there's no question this is real. It is killing people, and we have been distracted by all this stuff about hoax. We don't know. And what it is, basically, nature fighting back. I said this in my video, which is bullshit in the virus. I wanted to read you. I may have time if I can find it.
Why did you take that video down? It was gone within a day.
No, I put it back up because what had happened, David Lispy, who posts my videos, had accidentally left my instructions at the beginning of the video for him when to start and when to end the video.
Oh, he gave it a new URL. I never got the URL, the updated one.
Well,
all right.
Well, I'll send you the new one. But what I wanted to read, we're never going to get a chance. I want to read the business about the book, which we won't get to. But I tell you what I'm going to do. There is no question. I have a lady named Amy Wiedenauer. 5 months ago, she notified me that a friend of hers insisted that I get the book. She's a professional critic, highly respected and widely read. She asked me if I'd send a book, so I sent a book. And then 2 weeks later, she sent me another note, and she said, you know, John, I have an 18-year-old son who's mentally challenged. Up until the age of 14, he used to read everything, loved to read because his mother read. But when he got to school and got bullied, he stopped reading. But he came in the other day and saw your book on my bed table and picked it up and never put it down. So I haven't had a chance to read your book. So I called her and I said, what's your son's name? The son's name is Ricky. I'm going to send him his own personal autographed copy. Right. She put up a review 3 days ago. And the headline of the review was one great hell of a read. And then if you read the review, which is staggering, she said she read the book, Jeff, 5 times. And in order to ensure that a review would get on Amazon, she ordered the book. That way that when she did the review, they would have to carry it.
I published that. I put that Amy Wiedenauer's thing up. It's superb.
But anyway, she had a great idea. She said, John, you know, with the lockdown coming, this is sort of marketing and this is sort of public service. You could go on Quibbly, which is this new marketing thing that's starting in April 6th, and it's out of Ireland, and read 5 or 10 minutes, read one of your stories. And she said, you'll sell books, and of course you'll comfort people. It's just wonderful. So what I've decided to do to make it easier, because Quibbly never answered me, I sent them an email, is I'm going to do it on camera once a week, because television is just god awful. And you know what is remarkable? They're still having these horrible commercials about all of these pharmaceuticals that are totally meaningless.
I know.
And sell stuff we don't mean. I mean, it's so they're going to be looking for things. So what I wanted to do tonight, which we obviously won't have time to do, is I wanted to you to read the first part. It's on page 173 of my book, and it's called Extras, Extras. And it was about my experience as a mail boy getting an extra part in 2 very famous movies. And it's only 4 pages long, and Jeff had agreed to read the first page, and I would read the other 3, and it has a great ending. And what I would do... Well,
you know, if you'd come on here more than once a month, maybe we could do this.
Oh, that's a good idea. And what I would also do... Okay, what you should also do is what I want to do. Aside from that, I am going to have my own Oprah book club. I am going to hold up a book that somebody else has written that people might love to read. Now, I'm going to gee, I wish how much time do we have?
Oh, 2.5 hours. Don't worry about it. Actually,
no, okay.
5 minutes.
Okay, could you take a really quick break or play a song or something? I want to find this note from my son.
Go ahead, look for it. It's not a problem. John, now, John,
yes.
John, here. All right. Now, what John was just saying, did you find it? Let me know when you find it. What I want you to do is to do these little televised reads from the book. Make sure I get them, and we'll start a John Barbour reads Your Mother's Not a Virgin. And I'll put them up in a special file on the home page, and everybody will be able to click and watch and listen. We'll do that.
Oh my God. Okay, I found it, and I'm scrolling.
And don't forget to tell me which chapter you want me to read for the audio version.
Well, that was one. I have a half a dozen of that, but I'm so swamped doing. You have no idea how many shows I'm doing. There's a fellow named Harlan Bowl in Los Angeles who was one of the greatest publicists in this business, and his last great client was Carol Channing. She just died last year. He loves the book. And he found the book, and he wants to help me for almost nothing. So I've been doing all kinds of shows. Anyway, here's what my son wrote, and it was in response to a guy who was saying this is some kind of bioweapon. I'm going to put on my glasses. Oh, I wish your folks could see me in glasses. Okay.
You're not going. Hold on. People want to know. You're not going on your tour to Montreal or Toronto. You've had to cancel that, I hope.
Yes, well, they canceled it for me, but you have no idea how heartbroken I was because I was really dying to go because I was going to do major media.
Well, we talked about it. I said, don't do it. Anyway, so they made the decision. Okay, you'll go on the other side of this mess. You'll get there.
Okay, here this is, my son addressed it and said, this is for your informed friend who was talking about it possibly being a bioweapon. And please listen to this. I hope I read it properly.
All right.
Dad, I'd say your informed friend would not survive a day in a criminal procedural writer's room. Bioweapon? Question mark. Even if that were true, how the hell would you be able to verify that? Besides some random post on Reddit. It is absurd. The conspiracy world has now become the fourth largest religion, existing in an echo chamber of confirmation feedback. So if this is a bioweapon created by the 1% who already control everything, why unleash it? To preserve the system that they already control and presumably dominate and protect by controlling the mainstream media, etc.? It does not make sense. You know what makes sense? Nature rules. This is like polio and malaria and name our history's most well-known diseases. It's a fluke of nature, and we can't stop it. We could let it ride out and kill millions. Sure, why not? It's Logan's Run. The young will survive. But do they really want to watch as their parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles die? An incredibly painful and very lonely death. Suffocation in isolation. Seriously? Question mark. Make no mistake. Those in power will try to protect what is theirs. But this is not a planned attack by some Dr. No-like group. It is absurd. The thing that doesn't make sense about this fear is, again, if they control everything already, why go to the trouble? I was working for a major company that is actually doing quite well now that everybody has to stay indoors. Netflix. And our production company was dealing with government officials. No one with power wants to keep people from giving them money. The flow of goods and services is the whole point. No one is trying to return to some feudal system of power and wealth distribution. There are inequalities, but this disease's rapid spread has only demonstrated what those are. There's a line in a Star Trek movie that I always come back to when I read these outlandish propositions. Quote, "What would God need with a starship?" Unquote. Once again, Dad, if this illuminate deep state types already control everything, if elections are meaningless, if the media is controlled, why unleash the super virus? Why not just drop a bomb, start another war, a world war? At least that keeps people working and dedicated to a functioning state economy. I know people need to blame somebody or find a pattern in the chaos, but sometimes there is just fucking chaos, and that is hard for people to deal with. I have always felt that the half-truth is far more dangerous than the outright lie, because it allows for differing opinions and differing points of view. It is hard to determine a fact. And at the end of the day, the only thing that you can probably confirm is whether you are alive or dead. I have come to believe that experts, in quote, or people with knowledge and expertise are essential, except everybody thinks they are a fucking expert. So what do you do? And I also know that people can react to a chaos they cannot adequately prepare for one. I guess I'm particularly worked up about this because I was in a foreign country where they were totally blindsided. And I know that an international conspiracy is difficult because of language and cultural issues. I ran into just trying to produce a stupid little TV show. And yet the news has been the same the world over. The mainstream news in caps. A viral infection jumped from animals to humans because, Dad, that is what nature does. And if there's any conspiracy, it might be Mother Nature sending us all to our rooms to think about what we've done. There you go.
Very nice. I don't want to belabor this. I know it's not a lot of fun, but it is the dominant story since 9/11, and it may surpass it easily. Talk to you soon. Be well.